But I think I'd like to be also in my writing, just become better at it. In my working life in marketing, I used to use the word KYB. That's know your business.
Oh, of course.
I
Yeah.
think it's important to have an understanding of what you're doing in writing. And if I can just get a bit more KYB into my writing, I'll be grateful.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Unfiltered Voices, the podcast that is all about busting the myth that self-published is second-rate. I'm Kelly Nissen. I'm an author coach and a self-published author, and I'll be talking to authors, illustrators, and other self-published industry professionals about their choices, their journeys, and everything in between. So stick around. There's a lot of turmoil in the publishing industry at the moment. Independent authors, author-published authors, we've always done it tough as well.
Yes,
But
absolutely.
there's a lot, even traditional publishers, particularly the small ones, booksellers, everybody's doing it tough. And you actually alluded earlier to hopefully people are going back to actually holding a book in their hands to read and that sort of thing. So everybody's doing it tough in so many industries and definitely in the publishing industry. If you had the control stick, what's one thing that you would do or change?
When I first met my wife, I was not an avid reader. I did not do a lot of reading because scholastically I was a little bit inept. Although when I was traveling in my work, I used to buy biographies because they're easy to pick up and put down and what have you. But I think if I was in control, I would maybe take a look at smaller and unknown writers, because some of the stuff I read, as I said, I've read a lot of novels and I enjoy some of them, but there's a repetition develops right through the books you read, murder mystery, blah, blah, blah. And having someone tell a story uniquely with a unique topic in a manner that captures you is important. And I think those stories essentially come from people who have had the life experiences, who are able to tell the story. So if I was them, I think I would take a bigger risk with more unknown writers than you don't have to be, a Jimmy Barnes. Every time they write a chapter of something, they're on every television show, and good on them, well done. But it's not necessarily what I think writing should be about. So unknown writers who've got stories to tell, I would be maybe reading some of their manuscripts with a bit more interest than what they do at the moment. You get a lot of rejections, as you know.
Yeah.
And I, of the 8 or 10 submissions I had made, I got one, which is the contract, which was wonderful. And out of those other 9, only one actually sent back and said, look, thank you for your submission. We studied it carefully, but we decided not to. The others you don't hear about.
Yes, and that's the norm now, I think, isn't it? So it is an interesting balance, I think, between marketability and sales versus really, like you said, those unique voices and, giving new voices a chance and that sort of thing.
I just, for example, Kelly, on the weekend, I read an article about Tom Hanks, and when Forrest Gump was being made, the executives who were funding it basically pulled the pin, said, look, it's a dumb story. No one's going to want to watch it. We're going to cut. So Tom Hanks and the director funded the story themselves. Now, here's a classic example. They had a story to tell, which a lot of people did want it. Now, the executives said, no, it's not going to make any money, so they didn't want to go ahead with it. And is that so as a publisher, is that something we should consider publishing?
Yes, yeah. And I think that just sparks a little thing in me where if you believe in your story and you've got a good story to tell, the odds are you're going to probably have to back yourself financially.
Absolutely right.
As well, because as you would well know, and we all know, publishing a book is very expensive
Yes.
process to do, and then you've got to try and sell it. So, people say, oh, look, you're selling your book for $30, 35, whatever, and you've sold 1,000 copies. Great. How much did you pay?
Exactly right.
Like, and people
Or
don't.
when you pay $24 a copy to get it printed, there's not much left.
Exactly. And paper has gone up. The
Yeah.
cost of paper and postage.
Yeah, well, that's one of the problems, and a lot of printers now are going to inferior quality and trying to save costs. Not necessarily good. Look, I would be foolish to give advice because I'm only a novice at it, but I do know that I do believe, like you, that there are some wonderful stories out there,
Yes.
absolutely wonderful stories. And if my dear mother was still alive, and I think about them often. Some of the stories she told me for future, I would love to put it because they were just wonderful, wonderful stories.
It's part of that legacy, and I've said this before, but humankind, we're storytellers, and
Absolutely right. Yes,
and
yes,
passing on stories is just so important.
yes.
So your writing career, and we can 100% call this a career, in writing, really, I think took off in earnest through Hazel Edwards' Complete Your Book in a Year program,
Yes.
which you've spoken about before. And I know a little bit about the program, and I just know that everybody that I know who's done the program has raved about it. Well, how do you think that working with Hazel sort of shaped you as an author?
Well, I think the first thing would have to say about Hazel and Complete Your Book in a Year is it gave me a purpose that I was lacking.
Mm.
And with Hazel's guidance, because when I first met Hazel, as I mentioned before, I started writing. I have vivid memories. I would sit out on my balcony, and it was the middle of summer, and I would start at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I just wrote and wrote and wrote as I speak.
Yes.
And Hazel honed in that content. Less is more. You don't need to say all those words. So
Yep.
she taught me about, look, just think about what it is you want to say and say it in as few words as you can, because otherwise you can, and that's something I'm learning as a learning process. So, when I, in one of the sessions in fact, it was the story that I told you about before when I got kicked out of home. When I actually wrote that chapter, as one of the things we had to do I think 6 or 7 of the women were crying. That's what we want. We want you to strike a chord. So you're on exactly the right track. That's exactly what I want you to do. Is you've told a story in simple terms that was relevant and people could relate to it. So she's taught me the relevance of content. Just because you see a refrigerator falling out the window and falling down a footpath means nothing. If it means nothing, if it's not really part of the story, don't put it in. So
yes, you need a bit of context there, I think, don't
exactly,
you? And
exactly
but
right.
also something like you're talking about evoking that emotion with with people who are reading your story. That's so important. Like that's what our goal is to
Exactly right.
connect in that way as well. So like I said, your writing's taken off. You've self-published. You've had short stories published. You have a contract for your first novel, but you spoke earlier about the University of Life. So I don't think you can ever say I've learnt all there is to learn now. So what's one milestone that you're now striving for?
Well, I would not be honest with you if I didn't say, well, look, I would love my second manuscript that I've done to be actually picked up by several publishers.
Yes.
That would be a plus for me, because that's what I suppose as a writer you would think, oh, wouldn't it be great for someone to publish a book? I mean, I am fortunate that someone has done that, and I'm hoping that maybe because of the success, and as you know, when you fill out questionnaires, they want to know what else have you published, and and once you can say, look, I have published this, it may open a few more doors for you. I hope that's the case, but I think I'd like to be also in my writing just become better at it. I've always felt, even in my working life in marketing, I think I used to use the word KYB. That's know your business.
Oh, of course,
I
yes.
think it's important to have an understanding of what you're doing in writing. And if I can just get a bit more KYB into my writing, I'll be grateful.
Yeah, I love that you're drawing on, your past career
Absolutely.
experiences
Yes.
and that sort of thing. And it's all applicable. It's just knowing, where to hone in, I think. So
Well, I think also part of it is, when you said you're reflecting back, I think honesty is very important. One of the things that I
mm,
pride myself on in my working life was that I was always honest with my people. The people I work with, I was honest, and you left a reputation of, we can work with this guy because he is an honest guy. And I think when you're
yes.
writing, you have to have that honesty about it. And I
Yeah.
suppose another word for it is compassion. Just
Yeah.
have the honesty and don't be afraid to say that you bawled your eyes out and what have you. That's what you did. That's what you did.
Yeah, exactly. Because you're showing yourself on the
Exactly.
page
Yeah.
and that sort of thing, that authenticity and credibility
Yes.
as an author. It's like, okay, well, he's just said this, and whether it's fiction or memoir, it's like, you know what, we can trust this guy.
Yes.
We
Yes.
can trust
Absolutely
this
right. Yeah.
person. Yeah. So the opening line of the blurb for If the Shoe Fits says, occasionally, a moment, a memory, a meeting, an event happens that changes the way you live your life. In that, you've got memory, meeting, event. You don't mention objects here. So if you had to sum up your family history using only 3 objects from around your house right now, what would you choose? So these
Well,
are like motifs, I think.
yeah. Well, I think the first and most important one for me, Kelly, is at the base of my entrance into my apartment, I have 3 irons, which my father used when he was a tailor. And on his passing, I had them all bronze.
Mhm.
Though in those days, men's suits were all formed. And I remember coming home from school and learning to do a herringbone stitch on calico. So, he would line the suits to make the breast solid, and all the lapel would have to be crisp. And so the heavy irons and the waxed buttonholes. So his irons resonated with me. I've had them with me ever since. Everyone that walks in says, "Oh, where'd you get those irons from?" And I tell them a story about my. So that's certainly one, and also it evoked the memories of, as I mentioned before, coming home from school and my father teaching me how to make wax buttonholes and how to sew that, and being part of that cultural thing.
Yes.
That is very important to me. Kelly, it's just digressing a bit. The closeness and the I suppose the connection you make with your parents. When I was writing my book, If the Shoe Fits, the chapter I wrote about my father, he passed away 25, 30 years ago, and I was sitting on a table not far from here, and Aileen, my wife, rushed up because I was bawling. I was sobbing uncontrollably.
Yes.
She said,
Yeah.
"What's wrong?" I said, "I don't know. I'm just writing about my father." And all of a sudden, these emotions and the room and his death, and when I was holding his hand, and they all
Mm,
just sort of swamped you. And so those irons bring back that. The second thing is my grandfather, Pascalis, who came to Australia in 1929 as a 29-year-old. As I said, he's the
mm.
one that's responsible for giving us the life in Australia. When he was in shearing sheep during the wet season, the men basically stood round and drank, and he saw a barber cutting hair. So he said, "Well, if he can do that and make a couple of quid, I think I might do it." So he went to Cairns and bought himself some clippers, 4 O's, 3 O's, a shaving strap, and he started cutting hair. And as a result of that, when he got his, it wasn't a passport, it was a certificate of registration that the government gave you, which meant that you could travel anywhere out of and within Australia without any restrictions. He came to Melbourne and opened up a barber shop in Swan Street, Richmond. And when we first came to Australia, 16 of us lived in this 4-bedroom house behind the barber shop. So when people talk about overcrowding with 4 or 5 people, I laugh about it because 16 of us, and we loved it because it was a sense of that community and family, and the kids got fed early. In those days, there was no electric razors and everything was done manually. So his clippers, my grandparents and my uncle and my brother were all hairdressers, and I was destined. They wanted me to be a hairdresser as well, and I spat the dumb and said, no, don't want to do that. But I've got my grandfather's original clippers, and I have now maybe 6 or 8 friends that I go around and cut the hair for them. So George, we need a haircut. I go around. Even my GP, who was my doctor for 45 years, he now has dementia. And his wife rings me and said, George, Ian needs a haircut.
And you use your grandfather's
Yes, I do.
clippers.
I use my hand,
Yeah.
So, and the third thing is, I have a magnificent photograph of the Kyriakou house in my apartment, blown up. And the reason for that is that when I first started going back to my village and wanted to get the history, and I spoke to relations, when I found out my great parents who went off to Romania for 4 years to work because there was no food, and they actually built this magnificent double-story house by hand from stones and pebbles, harvested from the river that runs through our village. And they had to pull on whatever method they had, all that stones. They had to dig the in the side of the mountain, the paved courtyard, which is a huge courtyard. The slate was carved out of a place called Bitola, which is the other side of the border. It's now part of Macedonia. Yeah. And they were brought back on a donkey, one at a time. There's about 130 of them. So I thought, this is really fantastic. It has got, and I was born in that house. I was born in the kitchen, as you said before, that house. And some of the stories, my sister died in that house, like Uppy. And some of the stories my parents told me when I was a young boy with rheumatic fever, my grandmother used to tell me, were just incredible. So that takes pride on my wall. And everyone that comes is, oh, what a great place. Where's that? I say, well, it's in a place only about a kilometre from the Macedonian border. So
yeah. Oh, that's amazing. And so those 3 items, your photo, the iron,
yes.
and the clippers, it's all it's connection.
Exactly. Yeah. And Kelly, when I wrote my book, the word connection is a very important word. My daughter, her name is Marina, and she's a beautiful child. My Marina is a really wonderful person. We speak every day without fail, and she was so proud of me. And this book was like having a brand new baby in your hands. The year I finished it, she was going off to Bali for a week's holiday with her husband, and she took it with me. And on the 3rd day, she rang me crying her eyes out. She said, Dad, I just connected with so many things you spoke about with Mum and the family. There was a connection. And so I achieved something. That was the connection I wanted, and that legacy that you want to leave for your kids and your grandkids.
Absolutely. And that's just beautiful. So I'm going to finish up on one question about your sister, about Agapi. Yes. So when I ask people to come onto or see if people would like to come onto the podcast, I send you a form which you filled in, and one of the questions, which throws a couple of people, but I ask what your catchphrase. And so you said that your catchphrase is kindness with a smile, which I think, just talking to you today, you embody that 100%. And hearing you talk about your family as well, it's obviously a family trait. So thinking about Agapi, sort of think, if she could see your book and hear your stories and that connection, that strong connection that you feel, what part of the book do you think would actually make her smile the most?
I would think that the probably the thing that would make her smile the most is I didn't actually start speaking till I was 3. So here's my eldest sister, who has a younger brother who couldn't talk properly till he was 3 years of age, an author. So that would give her, I think, a big
Yes.
smile to think that. And secondly, really the love and the honor that my parents showed towards my sister
Yes.
in her life is quite extraordinary. And as I go back to the stories, some of the stories they tell me about Agapi, and Kelly, I had no photos of Agapi. There was not one skerrick of evidence or what Agapi looked like. And when I was doing my research and I was asking my my younger sister Sia, did she have anything that I could perhaps look through? She gave me a pile of photographs, and there was one little book. It must have been maybe 60 years old. And when I opened the book, on the inside page of this book, there was a photograph of a little girl.
Yeah.
And I knew that little girl was my sister because as I went through the collection, I noticed this girl popping up on 2 or 3, and I said, that's got to be Agapi. And I actually have relations in a country town called Shepparton up in North. And I sent photographs to a living a relative. He said, "Oh, that's definitely Agapi." So Agapi would be happy that I found her, and
Yes.
I don't know what came over me, Kelly, when I found that photograph. I just cried because I'd found. Not only had I found her grave, I've actually found my sister. When I go to the monuments and give my parents' grave a scrub, they have a smile on their face.
Yeah. Look, honestly, I bet everybody does. Absolutely. So, and I've got a smile on my face just, hearing your story and your passion for, for um acknowledging your family and
Yeah, so
sharing
so
their
important.
story. Now, before when I was writing up these questions, I did Google stalk your name a bit, and doing that brings up a whole host of articles, that sort of thing. So anybody who wants to find you can find you fairly easily on the internet. But where is the best place that we can find you
Really,
and your books, actually?
if you would be just kind enough to put my email address, that would be the best way, Kelly,
Yeah.
because I don't, as I say, I've now don't have any stock of my books, but I'm able to have them printed within 3 or 4 days and get them out quickly
Perfect.
to anyone that wishes to read my story. I'd be eternally grateful, as I am to you.
Absolutely. And honestly, I encourage people to do that. Just reading other people's stories and just going, okay,
Yeah,
well, what can I
absolutely.
connect
Yes.
with? Yeah.
I've just actually ordered and getting your book to read too, so that we'll be
Thank
able to
you.
share stories.
Wonderful. All right, George, thank you so much for your time. This has
Thank
been
you, Kelly.
wonderful. Please, when your novel comes out, please let me know.
I'll certainly get in touch with you. I'd like to talk about it because it's quite a good read. I'm really happy with that one.
Yes, yeah, no, that would be fantastic, George. And again, thank you.
Thanks, Kelly. Much appreciated.